local government elections. Opposition criticizes the government for what it labels as poor handling of international trade agenda. Group Chairman of Dream Entertainment Limited Kamal Banki applauds the arrival of a 24-hour entertainment zone. On the international scene, UN says people treated for injuries following a rush-on-aid convoy in Gaza on Thursday suffered bullet wounds. While in sports, Nottingham Forest will look to avenge loss to Liverpool in the English Premier League today. The details after this. Both of the major political parties have signaled their intention to file magisterial recounts in relation to the February 26 local government election. The People's National Party said Friday that it is contemplating a magisterial recount in Cornwall Mountain, one of 5 divisions in Westmoreland Central. According to the election results from the Electoral Office of Jamaica, the Jamaica Labour Party's candidate Donette Foster won the division, polling 1,497 to the PNP's Abigail Malcolm with 1,470. The vote difference between them is 27. Meanwhile, the Jamaica Labour Party JLP said it is filing a magisterial recount for the Kentire division in St. Andrew East Rural. The division went to the People's National Party's Vivian Brown Bond, who got 1,319 votes. The JLP's Calvin Clark received 1,287 votes, a difference of 32 votes. Government has budgeted over $221 million this fiscal year to continue work to enhance Jamaica's resilience to disasters and climate risks. The funds will be used to start coastal protection works in Anato Bay, and work will continue in the Big Pond Mitton Gully Drain in Old Harbour. The activities will be executed under the Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project being implemented by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund JSIF with financing from the Government of Jamaica and the International Development Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The details are contained in the 2024-25 Estimates of Expenditure recently tabled in the House of Representatives. Up to December 2023, achievements under the project included construction of the Montego Bay, Yallas and Port Maria fire stations, the Port Royal Street Coastal Protection Works, procurement of 2 water trucks for the Jamaica Fire Brigade, JFB, and the equipping of the seismic unit at the University of the West Indies, UWI. Shadow Minister of Foreign Trade Anthony Hilton has expressed concern about what he says is the government's continued poor handling of the international trade agenda and the lack of inclusion of key sectors of the country in preparation for far-reaching negotiations. Hilton says his concerns arise in the context of meetings taking place at the World Trade Organization 13th Ministerial Conference in Dubai. In a statement on Friday, Hilton says Jamaica is long past the time when delegations leave the country to attend important meetings with potentially far-reaching implications for the people and economy without any consultation with key sectors and interest groups. Hilton further said he is unaware of any meaningful consultation with groups representing women, persons with disabilities, farmers and workers having taken place before the delegation went to Dubai to represent all of Jamaica and CARICOM countries. The Shadow Minister emphasized that a key objective of trade policy under a PNP administration will be to ensure that trade is equitable and inclusive. He says it will also have as policy objectives improving transparency in the decision-making processes and the ability of stakeholders. Hilton is calling on the government to provide a fulsome update on the outcome of the Dubai meeting. Group Chairman of Dream Entertainment Limited Kamal Banki says the arrival of a 24-hour entertainment zone in the island is a step in the right direction. The 24-hour zone will be accomplished with the renovation of the Jam World Entertainment Complex in Portmore, St. Catherine.
It's definitely a step in the right direction. Obviously, hopefully there's a lot more and we can articulate what could look like potentially, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I am truly grateful that the Governor General has publicly acknowledged our prowess in the entertainment field globally and is seeking to enhance that by creating spaces where it can thrive and flourish in a way that is, commensurate with our entertainment landscape.
Governor General Sir Patrick Allen announced the development of the entertainment zone while delivering the throne speech in February to mark the ceremonial opening of Parliament. Mr. Banki says the complex will provide a number of opportunities for Jamaicans to earn revenue.
For me, I welcome the opportunity to go later, go longer, and of course that means that people have an opportunity to earn from the creative sector 24 hours a day, because of course the creative sector does not necessarily function within the general concept of the 9 to 5. You can have events happening in the morning, can have events in the afternoon, and of course the nighttime without an issue of breaching the law. And that's one of the core principles that I see remedied here, because obviously, if you are in the dead of nowhere in a farm in Clarendon and you're playing music at 3 in the morning, technically the police could come and say, turn off the music as per the noise abatement.
Kamal Banki, Group Chairman of Dream Entertainment Limited, he was speaking on Friday on Nationwide at 5. Meanwhile, promoter of Strictly 2K Music Festival, Ibrahim Conte, says the entertainment zone is a fitting addition to the notion of Jamaica being considered the reggae capital of the world.
We know successive governments have discussed having entertainment zones, so to see it finally happening, it's really, really great news, and we hope to see other entertainment zones, because, when you think about the fact that Jamaica is the only country created 5 musical genres, we're if you want to call it the entertainment capital of the world, Kingston being the birthplace of reggae music, and we don't have a space close by, or we don't have a space that the product can be consumed on 24/7. So, the mere fact that this is happening is a great time for entertainment in Jamaica. So this is really good news.
Mr. Conte says he's hoping that plans being developed for the entertainment zone include the accommodation for medium to large size festivals.
I hope that there are plans in place for major festival and, let's say, medium-sized festival. So if you're having a 10,000 or 12,000 patron, Jam World, definitely that's the space for it. But whatever improvement is being made to the facility, it can facilitate for events that are between like the 3,000 and 5,000 range. And as well, as it relates to vending spaces, thinking about, the residents of Portmore, so that way, this space, for some residents, it may be an inconvenience, but they can feel the economic impact.
Ibrahim Conte, Portmore, promoter of Strictly 2K Music Festival, he was also speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Friday. Businesswoman Edith Chin is the new Custos Rotolorum for Clarendon. She was sworn in at King's House on Friday, where Governor General Sir Patrick Allen presented her with the instrument of office. Chin said during her time in office she intends to encourage collective re-engagement with the national anthem as a dynamic guide for national development and personal responsibility. She added that she will prioritize partnerships, unity and dialogue. Custodies represent the Governor General in their respective parishes. They engage in activities that promote the rule of law, public order and civic pride. They also recommend, swear in and supervise justices of the peace in the execution of their legislative functions. Chin replaces William Shaguri, who served the parish for the past 13 years. And now to news overseas. Many of the people treated for injuries following a rush on an aid convoy in Gaza on Thursday suffered bullet wounds, the UN has said. UN observers visited Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital and saw some of the roughly 200 people still being treated. Hamas has accused Israel of firing at civilians, but Israel said there was a stampede after its troops fired warning shots. Leaders from around the world have called for a full investigation. And now to sports. Nottingham Forest look to avenge a blow loss from when Nuno Espirito Santo leads the Tricky Trees into a visit from newly crowned league champions Liverpool at the City Ground in the English Premier League today. The Reds clobbered then Steve Copper-led Forest at Anfield in late October behind goals from Diogo Jota, Mohamed Salah and Darwin Núñez, but all three could miss this contest with Jota certainly out. Forest has picked up 4 points from a possible 12 since 2024 and is coming off a 4-2 loss to Aston Villa. And now to recap the top stories making the news at 9. JLP and PNP now considering magisterial recounts for February 26 local government elections. Opposition criticizes government for what it labels as poor handling of international trade agenda. Group Chairman of Dream Entertainment Limited Kamal Banki applauds the arrival of a 24-hour entertainment zone. On the international scene, UN says people treated for injuries following a rush on an aid convoy in Gaza on Thursday suffered bullet wounds. While in sports, Nottingham Forest will look to avenge loss to Liverpool in the English Premier League today. I'm Andrew Cannon. You can find the news on our website at nationwideradiojm.com and on the Nationwide app available on Google Play and the App Store. Use this next midday, but stay tuned for History for Tomorrow.
If it's news, it's got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
Outperform, outlast. We top performance. Jackhammer. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electrician. Fancy select tools, 3 parts and 3 repairs. 3 parts, 3 repairs. 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-6111-4. Delta Supply, we service what we sell.
On Monday, March 4, 2024, it's all about coconuts. Stop by the Pegasus Hotel on Knutsford Boulevard for the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development, a workshop under the Regional Coconut Project. Join Cliff Hughes online on March 4, 2024 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for all things coconut. The project is geared towards improving the production of coconuts across Jamaica and the Caribbean. Farmers, small and medium enterprises, Jamaica. You cannot miss this one. That's a live broadcast of the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development during Cliff Hughes Online on March 4 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the Coconut Industry Board.
Shut down right on time.
The important thing in life is not the triumph, but the fight. The essential thing is not to have won, but to have fought well.
It's huge! It's massive!
Faster.
Up the hero wins! 10-6-0! Olympic record! Wow!
Higher. Stronger. Welcome to the new chapter of sport. The games of the 33rd Olympiad.
On Nationwide 90 FM, a revolution in media.
I'm Dennis Brooks.
I'm Marlon Campbell.
I'm Floyd Green.
And I'm Garth Williams. Catch us on the Jamaican Dads podcast right here on Nationwide 90 FM, Thursdays at 8 p.m. with a repeat on Sundays at 6 p.m.
The Jamaican Dads podcast is all about providing men with a healthy, safe, and functional forum to tackle many of the taboo topics that concern our masculinity.
Like everyone else out there, we're dads of varying amounts of experience who come from different backgrounds and often view the world differently.
We're definitely not perfect, but we're all brethren and we're all committed to this piece of rock called Jamaica.
Too often, there are no safe spaces for men to explore the issues which are important to us.
Plus, most of the content out there about parenthood is produced by women, for women. So we think it is important that we be the change we want to see.
Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jamaican Dads with a Z.
And definitely join us here on Nationwide 90 FM every Thursday at 8 p.m. with a repeat on Sundays at 6 p.m. for the Jamaican Dads podcast. It's a revolution in media.
Tune in to our program live from our YouTube channel, Nationwide 90 FM. And remember to like, subscribe, and share our content. And we're also on WhatsApp at 876-285-5693.
Listen to Nationwide 90 FM on 90.1,
90.3,
90.7,
90.9,
or visit our Flow channel on a 916. To our valued listeners, for questions, comments, or concerns about our programs, email us at programs@nationwidenewsnetwork.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to History for Tomorrow on Nationwide 90 FM. I'm your host, Enrico Kenve.
Good morning everyone, I'm your co-host, Mia McMorris, and we'll be with you for the next 2 hours.
Yes, Mia, I was wondering, before this week, were you familiar with the term grief tourism?
You know, I've heard it before, maybe not that exact term, but the meaning, yes, I am familiar.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm referring to this because this seems to be another idea by Minister of Tourism Ed Bartlett to renew Jamaica's tourism offer and revive certain parts of Jamaica, areas in Jamaica that have been somewhat neglected, right? And in a way, sort of reminds me also of the pier, like in Port Royal. You're familiar with it, right? Yeah. That was also built in a way against some of the advice of experts. Remember that Port Royal had been declared part of World Heritage and so on. And I know that experts, including experts within this civil service, were opposed to the idea because of the environmental implications, degradation, all of those things, right? But still, they went ahead with it because the idea was that it will revive the area, bring about the much needed development.
Yeah.
A few years since then, I'm not sure what has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that revitalizing Port Royal was important. Because, you know, as a child, I'd go out to Port Royal and, you know, I think about the Giddy House and those things, and they were very run down.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a benefit to improving the area. But it's kind of like you go down there now and it just feels normal. It doesn't have that same historic kind of... It's like... Yes, revitalization, but no at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I will have to see, to be honest, I will have to see what impact it has had on the lives and the well-being of the people in Port Royal. But at the time, I wrote a paper, an article, that in which I would say the Department of History can help. We can help, because the idea is that you need also the expertise to sort of like get these ideas across. And ideas that have regard for the historical significance of the area, but also because have regard for the communities who live in the area. This grief tourism, again, is another opportunity, I think, another opportunity that in which like this is going to be put in question. And I would like us to talk about it, and for that purpose, Sudin is going to discuss this issue during the What's Poppin' segment. So I'm looking forward to the comments and what what our listeners want to or need or
we definitely want to hear your opinion as always. Right. So for those tuned in, please remember that you can follow us and send us your feedback on History for Tomorrow at Instagram. Facebook at Nationwide 90FM and History for Tomorrow, YouTube at Nationwide 90FM. You can also text us on WhatsApp at 876-307-7475. You can also download the Nationwide app from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store so you can listen to History for Tomorrow on the go.
And they can also send us a voice note if want on WhatsApp.
If you want to hear your voice on the radio.
Yes, because sometimes I know people don't like to text, but remember the WhatsApp number is 876-307-7475. So that being said, we'll begin our show, as always, with the headlines and our hot pick of the week. And after that, we'll be talking to Professor Catherine Hall about her upcoming lecture that she will be delivering at the Elsa Govaya Memorial Lecture hosted by the Department of History and Archaeology.
We'll continue at 10 with In the Classroom, this week with 2 Calabar students.
After that, we'll take a look at This Week in History.
We'll then continue with What's Popping.
And as always, we'll end the show with the historical birthday of the week. Coming up after a quick break, the headlines.
But is this real? Hey Greg, come look at this. Oh my, it's happening. Mr. Daniels, the numbers keep getting bigger and bigger.
Sir, the clicks are off the charts.
Hello, sales? What's the emergency? 9,000 clicks in one day? 3,000 order? So how much we have left? What? I soon call you back. Mr. Nakamoto, it's Danny from Jamaica. I need 5,000 of the big ones. We're back in business.
Yes, sir. Arigato. Suene. Amplify
amplify your brand. Let Nationwide 90 FM assist you in tapping into a captivated audience across our social media platforms. For more information, contact us at 876-630-1210 or sales@nationwidenewsnetwork.com. Businesses, companies, and entrepreneurs, let's supercharge your brand.
Welcome back. You're listening to History for Tomorrow, and here are the headlines. Westminster Abbey agrees in principle to return sacred tablet to Ethiopia. So I found this article really funny because we did the show on Ethiopia last month and ancient Ethiopia and discussed this same tablet. So the tabot, a blackened flat piece of wood featuring a carved inscription that symbolically represents the Ark of the Covenant and the Ten Commandments, has been at the Abbey since British forces returned with it from the Battle of Makadala, where it was looted in 1868. I just want to make sure that we use those words. Looted.
Okay.
Stolen.
Okay, I thought they bought it.
Other adjectives. Anyways, so Westminster Abbey did not confirm what triggered the change of position, that being the agreement in principle. But there has been growing pressure on all European institutions that hold items taken during the colonial era. And this includes, of course, the Benin bronzes, which have been much in the news for the last few, I want to say, years. But that ambition has been questioned. So this idea that, we can loan these tablets back, which has been kind of the ongoing discussion. But most of the nations where these things are being loaned, they can't afford the insurance. So that's why this becomes like a kind of
the insurance, which is an insurance, is an insurance that it's established, that requirement established from.
So when these
from the UK or
exactly. So when these items are loaned, the country that is hosting it has to pay insurance, and oftentimes it's
should
insurance.
anything go wrong,
exactly,
like they can get looted, attacked, and looted. Right?
Imagine that.
I mean, not that never happened before.
Crazy.
Right?
Anyways, so there have been successful returns of the tabots held in British institutions. One was sent back to Ethiopia soon after it was discovered in a church cupboard in Edinburgh 23 years ago. So let's recognize that these things aren't necessarily being held in like safe locations themselves. When the artifact landed back in the country, which had been petitioning for the return of its tabots for decades, a public holiday was declared and thousands of people lined the streets of Addis Ababa to witness its return.
Yeah, and remember how the artifacts that also were stolen or went missing from the British Museum. Our next headline, I think our listeners obviously are familiar with all of this. Survivors of Gaza aid chaos, say Israeli forces shot at them. Some Palestinians injured in Gaza aid delivery disaster on Thursday said that Israeli forces shot them as they rushed to get food for their families, describing a scene of terror and chaos. The Gaza health authorities said that 115 people were killed in the incident on Thursday, attributing the deaths to Israeli fire and calling it a massacre. In the meanwhile, the government of Israel disputed those figures and said most victims were trampled or run over by the mob, as they were described. One Israeli official also says soldiers fired warning shots in the air and then fired at those who did not move away and were seen as a threat. Since then, the UN officials have witnessed how many people who were injured at the time, they have visited them in hospital. Many of them have, and many of the victims themselves, of the casualties, actually have gunshot wounds. Right, so I think it's very clear. But I think the idea is that in addition to the blatant disregard for people's lives, or the Palestinians' lives by the Israeli forces, there's also problems related to the collapse of orderly aid distribution in areas of Gaza occupied by Israel.
Yeah.
And that is creating the desperation that was behind also this massacre.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to note that all of this is happening with the complicity of most of the most powerful and influential nations in the world that continue allowing Israel to act in this way without strongly condemning their actions against the people of Palestine.
Yeah. Next in the headlines, Nicaragua oppression is tantamount to crimes against humanity, says report. So, this is kind of similar to an article that we did maybe 2 weeks ago. But there are allegations following
Well, you mean that we have spoken about corruption before?
We've spoken about human rights breaches in other South American countries at the time, in like the last month or so. The allegations are following an investigation into the country's expanding crackdown on political dissent, and Nicaragua has been in the news, if we can remember, the Miss Universe competition last year. Nicaragua won, but she was arrested, the Miss Nicaragua.
I totally forgot about that one.
Yeah. So, anywho, the Ortega government has for a long time gone after opponents, but it hit a turning point with mass protests against the government in 2018. They have been known for incapacitating any kind of opposition in the long term. UN experts investigating the issue since March 2022 have said it is a serious systematic human rights violations tantamount to crimes against humanity continue to be perpetuated by the Nicaraguan government for political reasons. The state has targeted civilians, including university students, indigenous and black Nicaraguans, and members of the Catholic Church. The government continues to say that the mass demonstrations against it in 2018 constituted a failed coup and attempt orchestrated by the United States, and typically defends any repression as a crackdown on anti-government plots. The report that has been published by the UN says the crackdown has expanded past Nicaragua's borders to the hundreds and thousands of people who have fled government repression, largely landing in the United States and Costa Rica. Hundreds of Nicaraguans have been stripped of their citizenship and left stateless, unable to access fundamental rights.
All right, last headline, a European-funded security force that helped Senegal government crush democracy protests. The Senegalese government deployed a special counter-terrorism unit created, equipped, and trained with funding from the European Union to violently suppress recent pro-democracy protests. A joint investigation between Al Jazeera and Port Causa Foundation reveals. Basically, this headlines is about a project by the European Union to fund security forces in Senegal and other parts of West Africa to train police forces to fight against terrorism, but also against smugglers of migrants in the region. But the Senegalese government instead has chosen to use these forces to crash down the opposition, right? And this is actually has backfired because, in a sense, basically the idea behind this funding is to crack down also illegal immigrants into Europe, and this is one of the main reasons behind this funding. However, the deterioration of the political situation in Senegal has driven many people away from Senegal, and the number of migrants from Senegal into Europe has increased significantly since then. This is something that I would like to revisit at a different point in terms of the type of assistance, help, aid provided by Western countries and how it sometimes goes very wrong.
Right.
And those are headlines. And it is your time for your hot pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really want to go back to the my news item about Nicaragua. As I mentioned, we have spoken about human rights violations happening in some South American countries. And I just think right now the world is under a lot of governments are under a lot of scrutiny because of these kinds of human rights violations that are coming out. I wonder at the time that we are in right now, when we are looking at these kinds of authoritative dictatorships that are becoming more and more prevalent, not only in South America, in Europe, in Africa, and what this means for us as historians, as we are reviewing the narrative. We've seen this kind of thing happen before, and that's why we kind of want to.
I think it's very interesting that you mentioned this, because, and this is something that oftentimes I discuss with my students, especially in African history. There was a revival of democracy in parts of the then known as the Third World in the 1990s, in Africa, in Latin America, in parts of Asia, and that had something to do with the end of the Cold War. One of the nefarious effects of the Cold War was how both the Soviet and the American-led blocs basically supported dictators in many parts of the developing world. When the Cold War came to an end, Western nations decided that they were no longer interested in supporting dictators, and that in a way is one of the factors that facilitated the re-democratization of these societies. However, we have seen in the past, I will say decade and a half perhaps, it's a turn of events in which we're going into increasing authoritarian tendencies, not just in countries where we see this type of authoritarian dictatorial leaders, but also we are seeing some of these authoritarian tendencies in the politics of supposedly consolidated democracies. We saw it of course, in the United States. In the United States, it's still at risk in a way. We have seen it in Europe, in Hungary, in Poland, in Brazil, for example. So yes, I think we can identify this as a global trend. And perhaps the question is what is happening that is feeding this kind of turn of events.
Right. So it's just something that we want our listeners to think about when you're reading the news next.
All right. Thank you for sharing your hot pick. We're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back shortly to talk to Professor Catherine Hall. Please stay tuned.
Outperform, outlast. We top performance. Jackama. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electrician. Fancy select tools, 3 parts and 3 repairs. 3 parts, 3 repairs. 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-6111-4. Delta Supply. We service what we sell.
You can have it all. Company events, birthday parties, or the wedding of your dreams. It's all possible at Grand Palladium Hotels and Resorts. We have magnificent event rooms and a dedicated team that will make your event the best experience that only Grand Palladium Hotels and Resorts can offer. Contact us at 876-619-0000 or call your favorite travel agency and ask about our promotion designed especially for you.
Big sale now on at Cameron Industries. Up to 50% off quarter and 5/8-inch furniture ply and other items. Now available. Termite-resistant furniture ply, granite, quartz, and solid surface countertops. You don't want to miss these amazing deals. Visit us at Hatfield Mandeville or call us at 963-0628.
Welcome back. You are listening to History for Tomorrow, Nationwide 90 FM. Every year, the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of the West Indies honors the memory of Professor Elsa Govaya. First,
amazing figure.
Yes, first professor of Caribbean history, first woman professor, I believe, in UWI, at the University of the West Indies.
That's across all departments.
Yes, and by honoring her memory, we're not just honoring her memory and her work, we're also honoring the memory and the work of pioneers like her. Before her generation, there was no such a thing as Caribbean history or West Indian history as they knew it at the time. Right. So the lecture, the memorial lecture organized by the department every year serves to honor that work, but also to show to celebrate Caribbean history and to show the way forward, and show the way forward by bringing to Mona, to Jamaica, reputable Caribbean historians or historians of the Caribbean who will talk about the work, but also show us kind of the way forward. Not everything about the Caribbean past has been written. A lot of it is yet to be written. And this year, we have, the department has invited Professor Catherine Hall, a very notable, reputable historian of the Caribbean. And this morning, just to give a bit of a snippet of her work, but also the lecture that she will share with us, we have Professor Catherine Hall with us this morning. Good morning, Professor. How are you? Professor, good morning. All right, we're going to try to see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if she can hear us now. No, okay. In the meantime, while we sort the problems with the audio, let me just let the audience, the listeners know that the El Segovia lecture by Professor Catherine Hall will be delivered on March 12th at the University of the West Indies Regional Headquarters from 5:30 p.m. and it will be it will be streamed on YouTube via UE Mona Media. Professor Hall, I think we have you now. You can hear us now, right? Okay, I think I hear her voice. All right, we're gonna try to solve those problems. In the meantime, Mia.
Yes.
Caribbean history.
Yes.
You are part of it,
yes.
Right? You're part of the department. So, how aware? How much are you think about when you do your work? You think about the contribution of pioneers like I'm thinking of course, Professor Govaya, but I mean Professor Hall, Auger.
I think about it all the time. And I was having this conversation with my younger cousin, and she was complaining about learning Caribbean history. And I mean, I had the same kind of complaint when I was younger because I didn't understand the gravity. When we think about the fact that when my grandmother was a student, she did not learn Caribbean history the same way that I learned it. She was learning British history, which is very different from Caribbean history. That means that the way that the Caribbean was viewed was under a very colonial perspective.
Yeah.
So when you think about pioneers like Professor Gavayo, Hall, all of these persons, you realize that they were breaking the wall. They were allowing us, students of Caribbean history now, historians of Caribbean history now, to see the people of the Caribbean as unique, as important to the narrative.
Yeah, putting the Caribbean societies at the center. That was indeed like groundbreaking. And the thing is, it's very relevant is that now current generations that sort of take it for granted without being aware. Yeah, without being aware of the work has gone into it.
Exactly.
All right, let's see if we have Professor Hall on the line now. Professor Hall, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, great. Excellent to have you here. All right, so Professor Hall, we'll have a bit to catch up. So let's start with the first question. You'll be in Jamaica for the 39th Annual El Segovia Lecture Series. Could you please tell us a little about the topic you'll be presenting on this momentous event? I know that you don't want to give too much away, but just to entice our listeners to come and join us in a couple of weeks.
Okay, well, I'm going to be talking about what I've called Britain's troubled relation with slavery. So it's about what's been happening, both in the recent and in the more distant past, in terms of beginning, hopefully, to question more seriously Britain's history in relation to slavery and colonialism, and decide that it's time for a reckoning between Britain and Jamaica, particularly. Obviously, I'll be focused on this particular occasion. So there's been lots happening here, particularly since the Black Lives Matter movement, in terms of a response to and wanting to know more about that whole history, recover it, and realize what its significance is for Britain, never mind for the Caribbean.
Yeah. All right, that is very interesting because, in a sense, it sort of stresses something that is of great relevance is that history is always that conversation between past and present, right? And always with an eye in the future. And I was wondering, you refer to the Black Lives Matter movement and so on. How much of the current sort of revision or revisiting process is due to what you would call grassroots activism, and how much you think is due to the work of historians of the Caribbean or the formerly colonized territories?
Well, I'd say it's both, very importantly both. The Black Lives Matter, because lots of people came out on the streets, both black and white, to demonstrate the importance of a reckoning on these different and unequal relations. But at the same time, of course, historical work's been going on for a long time, opening up those questions. And so I think the combination, there's now much more research available, much more information available, which, of course, the activists are making good use of.
Mm-hmm.
So, in re-examining British imperial past, you have written about Edward Long. Some of our listeners may have heard about this figure in passing, but can you tell us who he was and why he was such a central figure in Caribbean history?
Well, he was an Englishman who came as a colonial to Jamaica, and his family had been in Jamaica since the founding of the colony. His great-great-grandfather was one of the founding fathers of the colony, Samuel Long. Mm-hmm. And so Edward Long came to Jamaica in the 1750s to make a living, basically, because Jamaica was seen as a place where you could make a fortune, which he did, on the basis, of course, of the exploitation of enslaved labor. But then he returned to England in 1768, and he had already been planning to write a history and collecting up lots of materials. And he wrote this 3-volume history of Jamaica, which isn't really just a history. It's sociology, it's economics, it's geography, it's literature, it's everything about Jamaican society. It's the flora and fauna, it's the weather.
Yeah.
It's an encyclopedia of knowledge about Jamaica, but it's also a book which was to demonstrate that slavery was legitimate and that slavery was essential to British wealth and power. So it was a political intervention. It wasn't just any old history that he was writing. Mm-hmm. It was a political intervention in favor of the slave trade and slavery. And so it's become, of course, infamous in many ways, but also because there's such a wealth of information in these 3 volumes, and it's very well written. Elsa Gavaya really admired Long as a historian. And so it's lived on. It's still in print. These 3 volumes are still in print, despite his racism. And part of what's so important about the 3 volumes is that he's determined to justify racial inequality.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that it's still in print. Like, you can still go to some shop and pick this book up. So I wonder, do these writings continue to influence perspectives of the colonial period and chattel slavery, as well as the perceptions of the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica, in the UK?
Well, I'd say you couldn't go to any old bookshop and find it, but you could go to libraries everywhere and find it. Mm-hmm. But yes, the reason why it survived is because of the argument about racial difference, and because those arguments still run on and on and on into the 21st century. So the kinds of justifications he produces for racial inequality are still being argued, and that's why the first person who wrote about black people in Britain, Peter Fryer, who wrote a very famous book called Staying Power, he calls Edward Long the father of English racism, because Edward Long told people in the metropolis about all the reasons why they might think that black people are inferior, are different, and are there to serve white people. So in that sense, he's had a very, very pernicious influence over centuries and generations. And it's not that people now would know that they're parroting Edward Long's arguments, but those arguments have lived on. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing to see how pervasive, long-lasting these views have been, right? But anyway, in addition to the work that you and other historians of the Caribbean are doing, what do you think it will take for these prevailing perceptions, especially about the UK and its imperial past, Britain's relationship to the Caribbean, and even the understanding of chattel slavery, what it will take for these views to change?
Well, I think it's changing. So in that sense, I think there have been really important shifts. And so, for example, together with colleagues at University College, we produced what's called the database of British slave owners, all the people who got compensation after the abolition of slavery. And it's been an incredibly influential database. It's given people the opportunity on a public database that you don't have to pay for to find out about their ancestors and trace connections right back into the late 18th century, early 19th century. So that material, that evidence, that solid evidence of British involvement in slavery, which has been denied for so long, because for so long the argument's been it all happened somewhere else. Race isn't important in Britain. Yeah. Race matters in the US. Yeah. And that's what, lots of kids in school have learned about race through US politics, not through US history, not through the civil rights movement, not through colonialism. So these things are changing, but we've got a struggle on our hands. It's not clear. You never know really how things are going to go. And we have to keep on making the arguments, which certainly more and more people are making the arguments. And it's not just historians and teachers, it's artists and filmmakers and theatre directors and, all kinds of people are engaging with this whole question. And what's good about it is that, history is always about debate. It's always about questions. There's no simple answers to any of it. So as long as we can keep the debates going, keep on having the arguments, keep on making the case, keep on producing more evidence, that's what we have to do.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic you say that, because it's a debate, but it's an informed debate with sound arguments and with evidence, and that's the work that is going on right now that can help to change these perceptions. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back shortly and continue talking to Professor Hall. Please stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're still listening to History for Tomorrow on Nationwide 90 FM, and we're speaking to Professor Hall. So just following up on our last question, in your work, you have made it a priority to highlight the impact of colonialism and imperialism both in the Caribbean as in the UK. if we're not mistaken, you're a British historian by training. So what led you to develop this approach and research Caribbean history in the first place?
Because when I was a young woman, I fell in love with a Jamaican and we got married. My husband was Stuart Hall, who's quite a well-known cultural theorist and Jamaican. So I've had a connection with Jamaica since 1963 when I first met Stuart. But I didn't immediately start working on the Caribbean then. It wasn't until at that time I was working on questions of class and gender in Britain and making the arguments for the importance of feminist history. So then in the 1980s, when the whole question of being black and British became a big political issue in Britain, it really alerted me to thinking about, what it was about the history that I'd never found out. I was so focused on British history in the 19th century, but actually there were loads of things to find out about what was going on in Jamaica. And I'd been coming to Jamaica, but never explored that connection. So then I started exploring the connections through family in complicated ways, through Stuart's family, but also through, my father was a Baptist minister, he wasn't a missionary. And I got very interested in the Baptist missionaries in the 19th century and the way in which they were involved with fighting for emancipation, particularly William Knibb. So a whole set of family connections and political connections about the importance of reconnecting Britain and its colonial history, because the way in which imperial history had been done for a very long time in Britain was that as if it was totally separate from domestic history. Domestic history was all about here and us, and imperial history was all about you lot over there. But in fact, of course, they're all about all of us. And it was those connections that became very, very important for me and which I've really been pursuing in different ways ever since.
All right. So I think that's fascinating. So I thought that you were going to tell us, like, your supervisor told you that.
Yeah, that you had to research this.
No. No, I was just joking. I think it's always great when historians are driven by personal reasons in a way, because it gives that sort of sense of passion to the work that we do. But as part of the whole, and I think going back a little bit to the ideas that you discussed at the beginning, and going back to the whole process of re-examining history, decolonizing history in some cases, issues of identity and underrepresentation have taken center stage. You are a white British historian. So the question is, how do you think this affects your contribution to changing widely held views about the British and other European empires and the legacy of Europe's relationship with the Caribbean and other formerly colonized territories?
Well, I think that what I came to understand was that I felt I had a responsibility as a white British historian to understand colonialism and racism and empire, and that the part that white British people have played in that, and the ways in which white people have benefited from the histories of all the history of empire, actually. So the particular responsibility was to say, look, Britain has been involved. Britain has benefited. Britain's wealth and power have been based in part on its relation to empire. And that's an argument that needs to be made for everybody in Britain.
Yeah.
So clearly, there's a huge job to be done, and that has been being done about discovering the histories of enslaved people and black and brown people across the empire. And lots of that work is being done. But as a white British historian, I thought my job was to discover about the constructions of whiteness and how ideas about being white and the power it gives us are rooted in notions of inequality with those peoples who've been colonized. So one of the reasons why Edward Long has become so fascinating to me, and I'm not really going to talk about him in the lecture, but I have just published a new book about him, is that he is just as interested in demonstrating what it means to be white, which he always uses with a capital letter, as what it is to be what he calls Negro with a capital N. So he's very concerned to establish the basis of white power. And he speaks about it absolutely directly. So I think that's tremendously important because white power has been kind of veiled and masked in Britain forever, actually. That idea that because you're white, you have a whole range of privileges and possibilities which other people don't have. So I'd say a sense of personal responsibility and political responsibility to do that work.
So I'm just going to pivot us a little bit more to the lecture itself. So the Elsa Gavile lecture celebrates the contributions and legacy of pioneering Caribbean historians. How would you say, and I think you've mentioned a little bit about your husband, but how would you say the work of Stuart Hall, Gavile, Roy Auger, and so many other Caribbean historians of their generations have influenced your research?
They've all influenced it. I read them all. They've been incredibly important to me. But I'd go back a bit and I'd say that probably the two people who've been most important have been C.L.R. James and Eric Williams. Neither of them Jamaican, but never mind. So important in being the first historians of the Caribbean to write about the relation between capitalism and slavery. That's what they opened up. And C.L.R. James in the Black Jacobins and Eric Williams in Capitalism and Slavery. They're like they're the classic texts that have guided me in thinking about how to think about the relation between Britain and the Caribbean. And then all these other people, Elsa Gavile, as I told you, she really rated Long. She thought he was a brilliant historian, whereas Eric Williams thought nobody should read him, that he was a disgrace. I think he was wrong about that. I think we have to call him to account. We have to take his importance seriously. But one of the things that's going to be lovely about coming to Jamaica is the hope that, a few of those people will be around, and then all the contemporary historians who are there, who it's going to be such a pleasure to meet and talk to.
All right. Your coming lecture will contribute to celebrate and highlight the significance and impact of Caribbean history. For those who are listening to this conversation, especially for the students listening to this week's show, can you tell us why they should not, under any circumstance, miss your lecture on March 12th?
Well, it's hard for me to say that, but what I hope is that what I have to say might pique their interest, might make them curious, might make them want to know more, might make them think about their relatives and their kin in the UK and what they're up to, and what this long, we all are part of a long historic relation between Britain and Jamaica, and we want to make something better of it and recover from many of the wrongs that have been done by Britain in the Caribbean and in Jamaica.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and as you were talking about the rationale behind your lecture and the topic of your lecture, and maybe this is a conversation that we can have when you reach, but I was just thinking that perhaps it's also intriguing in a way how I perceive that we are at two different sort of stages. What you are talking about, this interest in history and revisiting history in the UK, in North America, in parts of Europe, in fact, and how perhaps this is not happening with the same strength and vigor in Caribbean societies and so on. I don't know if you have thought about it, if you are aware of it, and if you have thought about it.
Well, I do have some sense of that. And of course, I'm very interested to know how the debates about reparation are going in the Caribbean. I mean, of course, I've been watching it, and I'm aware of what's been going on in these last years and interested in what's going on. But of course, it has a very different set of meanings. The history has such a different set of meanings for you in the Caribbean from those of us in the UK. But then there are so many people of Caribbean descent in the UK now that it links up the histories all over again in ways that, of course, I'd say they've never really been separate, but they're so important now. And just think, we do have the Shadow Foreign Secretary now is David Lammy, who we hope will be in government before all that long, and he really understood the scandal of the Windrush. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to have people politically in those situations talking to the Caribbean as well as talking to the UK. I want to encourage that conversation as much as is possible.
Yeah, that means that we should also invite maybe our politicians to attend the lecture and see how political history is.
Yeah,
also, right?
like how much they know about the history of politics in the region. So I have one last question. You've mentioned, I feel like you're preempting me, but you know the field. If there's anyone who wants to come prepared and read in anticipation of your lecture, can you recommend any interesting reading for our listeners?
Well, do you know what? If they don't know Eric Williams' Capitalism and Slavery, I mean, I just think that's such an important book, and we've learned so much from it, and it's taken us into lots more work and being able to develop the arguments that he's making. And then if people want to come to it from a very different point of view and think about fiction, I mean, I still really love Andrea Levy's novel Small Island, which is about the Windrush generation and what they faced. So they're two very different possibilities for people that they might be interested in and like.
Oh yes, I love both of those. So I'm
excited. And well, if they haven't, they have 2 weeks to read it. So please, you should start today. All right. So thank you so much, Professor Hall. It's been really a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you, and really looking forward to listening to your lecture on March 12th. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
All right, so just remember that the lecture will be, it's open to the public on March 12th at the UWI Regional Headquarters from 5:30 p.m. And if you cannot make it to campus, but I hope you can make it to campus, you can follow it via YouTube on the UWI Mona Media channel. And remember that you will be able to pose questions to Professor Hall and participate in the conversation. We're going to take a very quick break now. Please stay tuned for In the Classroom.
Need to make a change to your title or need a title? Geoland Title Limited. They do lost title application, add and remove names from titles, wills, estates, first-time registration land surveys also included, affordable rates and flexible payment options. NLA adjudication and land titling waivers also available. They have 8 locations island-wide. Call 876-754-6436 or visit their website at geolandonline.com. Geoland Title Limited. Secure your land, secure your title.
Well, hear me now. Jamaica is an island of the Caribbean Sea, between latitude 17 and 18, and 700 miles out of Miami. A 4,000 square mile of property. The other spot for rates that are Blue Mountain.
You're listening to History for Tomorrow on Nationwide 90 FM, and it's now time for In the Classroom. And I said we actually have two students from Cedar Grove Academy in Portmore. These two students are in grade 11. That means that they're doing CSEC this year in a few months. And they are Shadis Edwards and Akeem Webb. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very good to have you here. You are, well, before anything, before we start, because we invited you to talk about your SBAs, a student-based assessment, I think, right? But before that, could you tell us why you chose to do history at CSEC level in the first place? Don't tell me you didn't have any other option.
Sure.
No.
All right, maybe Shadis can go first, and then Akeem.
For me, I chose to. Okay. I chose to pursue history because I like to learn about my country's past. It was always an interesting topic to me, and it was always very entertaining to me. So I decided to take it on a grander scale by doing history at the CSEC level.
Oh, well, I hope I see you in the department in a few years. Yeah, what about you, Akeem?
Well, I chose the topic due to my love for it back in primary school when my older sister gave me a history book.
Okay.
Already, and from that on, my passion for history grew, especially since I saw their research on it and it aligned my career in law. So I decided to pick it up and just do it in grade 10 for 6E.
Okay, so we're talking about SBAs. So I have to ask, what are your SBAs about? Why don't you start, Akeem?
Well, my SBA is about the Middle Passage actually, and how it affected both the enslaved Africans and the sailors during the period of 17th century and the 16th centuries.
Oh, interesting. What about you, Shadis?
My SBA is about resistance and revolt, which entails the different ways that African slaves perform various methods of resistance against the slave system and the slave owners.
Oh.
Okay, all right. That would be very interesting to see the various methods, because oftentimes people just think about kind of more violent methods and stuff like that. But they of course, there were different strategies. So looking forward to see what you come up with. How did you choose your topics? Did you choose the topic yourself, or did your history teacher assign it to you? Shadis first.
For choosing our topics, we were given a list of options from our teachers, and then we chose whatever topics we found most interesting for ourselves.
Okay.
How about you, Akeem?
It's the same thing as studies. Our teacher came to class that day, and we got a list of paper what to straight around the class, and we pick. Well, the limit was that 2 persons alone at a time could only do the same topic.
Okay.
Both have work.
Okay.
Yes. That's the topic that I stated.
All right. So I wanted to find out a little bit, because I have no idea about student-based assessment. My eldest child is going to do CSEC next year, so I guess I will become a little bit more familiar. I'm always catching up. I'm always learning about the Jamaican educational system as my children progress through the education system. So when you throughout the process, do you do presentations about the different stages of your process and so on? Akeem?
Yeah, of course. That our teachers do. They would just give us piece of part of SPH first, and then we just do it ourselves and mark it and explain what we did wrong and how we can correct it properly, so we can make it easier for her and ourselves as well. So we can actually pass the SPH.
So, I mean, I find both of your topics really interesting, but could you tell me what the most exciting thing or most interesting thing about your topic has been so far? Shadis, you want to go first since we just heard from Akeem?
Okay, no problem. The most interesting thing for me, because I'm a visual learner, when Mrs. teaching in class, sometimes she refers us to some movies that we can go and watch to learn about the exact thing. And that's always the most interesting thing for me, so I can actually visualize what had happened instead of just reading about it. That's always interesting for me.
Mm-hmm. And Akeem?
Well, for me, like most exciting thing, but like was reading for me, cause like I learned a lot. So it's why reading, like even before related to my topic, like one of the most exciting thing about it was like when the slaves were actually like when I learned about the effect of the sailors actually, cause
Mm-hmm.
like we didn't hear much about it when I was reading. And, like when I do my researches, I learned about all the effects, like such as like it had to be they were afraid of being robbed while on the slave ships, especially of revolts from the enslaved Africans while on board the ship. And that was very exciting because I'm learning more and more while I'm doing the SBA.
I mean, I can totally relate. I remember when I was doing my SBA, I was so excited because I went to the libraries. I read like my first kind of real primary source. I think mine was on women, enslaved women, and so I read Lady Nugent's diary for the first time then.
Okay.
So it was a really interesting moment for me because I'd always been reading somebody else's interpretation of history, and so this was my chance to read something a little more like somebody who was actually there, or like sources that were actually a part of what was happening. So it was really interesting for me.
Yeah, and on that note, you are in the midst of completing your projects. How, so far, how will you rate the experience of doing a history SBA versus maybe regular history assignments that you have done in the past? How different it is, how much you like it or dislike it compared to other types of assignments? Akim?
I give it a rating out of 8.5 because for starters, it's really have to like you have to take into consideration the sources. I have both primary and secondary sources as well. So if you don't really get both sources, I actually align to the topic as well, that can be a disaster for your experience. And you just have to know how to align the essay.
Mm-hmm.
You have to construct an essay properly, so in order for the readers understand what you're stating, so they doesn't like fall off topic. You have to be actually aligned to topic as well. So
Mm-hmm.
readers can able to educate, and SPA can play a vital role as well when you're doing your exams in May, June, because you're learning in the process as well.
Yeah.
And teacher, and you have to depend on the teacher to help you, because part is still learning by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Shadis, how about you? How will you rate it? How you compare it to other types of assignments?
Well, comparing to the other subjects that I do, the history SBA, it was not a walk in the park.
Okay.
Well, for me, you had to do a lot of research and a lot of reading. So even some stuff that aren't needed to your SBA, you're going to have to read through it to get to the point where you need to go. So for me, I would rate it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I like that you acknowledge the challenging nature of it, but you embrace it, because nothing that is important in life comes easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell my students, I mean, history is not rocket science, or it is not like quantum physics, right?
Right.
But it's complex.
Yeah.
And that complexity is an asset, because in a sense, basically, it allows you to, develop your skills, your cognitive capacities and stuff like that in ways that, I'm sorry, I think other subjects don't. So,
Right.
so I really value, I really rate how you say that, it's challenging, but you still embrace it.
I also like, Shadis, that you mentioned that you don't read like the exact thing about your topic. You're reading a lot of things so that you can fully understand what's happening in your period. So you're talking about rebellions and revolts, and I'm sure that you're going to have to talk about like the agriculture, the politics. You have to look at all of these things so you can understand what's happening in these particular movements. And I'm sure the same for you, Akeem, while you're studying these voyages.
Yeah.
You have to look at a little bit more than just what's happening on the sea.
All right. So I also want to rate, by the way, what's the name of your history teacher, by the way?
Teacher Hilutim.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Right. Because this is a work that a lot of it is on the students, but at the same time, it cannot happen without the proper guidance of the teachers. And I think the teacher, especially as you grow older, has to serve more as a guide than just like simply teach to you. All right. Thank you very much, Shadiz and Akeem, for joining us this morning. All the very best with your history SBAs and other subjects that you are doing this year.
Thank you.
All right, so we're taking a break now.
Yeah, but just remember that you can send us your comments on Facebook and YouTube and our WhatsApp number. You can send us a text or a voice note. So that's it for now. But we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be back with This Week in History.
The first politician Buster and Manley, the first great cricketer George Headley. 62 was independence for all Jamaican. The first festival song was Water Bam Bam. It done by the triple toads and the metal. You have to know about your country. You have to know about your country. Will you me know? Me say out of 21 and now at 22nd. 22 years of age is our little island. Thanks to all heroes and politicians. Me say all sportsmen and all musicians. All factory workers and all farmers from the land. Say 1962 a big celebration.
Who shops at Creative Building Finishes? You, the homeowner who creates luxurious spaces with our floor and wall tiles. The contractor and builder who are convinced that our ceramic tiles are right for the job. The architect and designer who make dreams come true with our wood look and porcelain tiles. Superior customer service, knowledgeable staff, inviting showroom, and you get where this is going, right? Shop 5 Red Hills Road or call 876-929-5553. Get tiles, get Creative Building Finishes.
On Monday, March 4, 2024, it's all about coconuts. Stop by the Pegasus Hotel on Knutsford Boulevard for the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development, a workshop under the Regional Coconut Project. Join Cliff Hughes online on March 4, 2024 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for all things coconut. The project is geared towards improving the production of coconuts across Jamaica and the Caribbean. Farmers, small and medium enterprises, Jamaica. You cannot miss this one. That's a live broadcast of the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development during Cliff Hughes Online on March 4 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the Coconut Industry Board.
Outperform, outlast. With top performance. Jackama. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electrician. Fancy select tools, 3 parts and 3 repairs. 3 parts, 3 repairs. 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-6111-4. Delta Supply, we service what we sell.
Big sale now on at Cameron Industries. Up to 50% off quarter and 5/8-inch furniture ply and other items. Now available. Termite resistant furniture ply, granite, quartz, and solid surface countertops. You don't want to miss these amazing deals. Visit us at Hatfield Mandeville or call us at 963-0628.
On Monday, March 4, 2024, it's all about coconuts. Stop by the Pegasus Hotel on Knutsford Boulevard for the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development, a workshop under the Regional Coconut Project. Join Cliff Hughes online on March 4, 2024 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for all things coconut. The project is geared towards improving the production of coconuts across Jamaica and the Caribbean. Farmers, small and medium enterprises, Jamaica. You cannot miss this one. That's a live broadcast of the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development during Cliff Hughes Online on March 4 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the Coconut Industry Board.
You can have it all. Company events, birthday parties, or the wedding of your dreams. It's all possible at Grand Palladium Hotels and Resorts. We have magnificent event rooms and a dedicated team that will make your event the best experience that only Grand Palladium Hotels and Resorts can offer. Contact us at 876-619-0000 or call your favorite travel agency and ask about our promotion designed especially for you.
It's so nice to shop Fontana style. Fontana style. Our service is top Fontana style. Fontana style. Easy parking, friendly smiles.
And we go that extra mile.
Come, enjoy it all. Variety galore, Fontana style. Fontana style.
Low prices and much more Fontana style.
Fontana style. This pharmacy's unique. We have everything you seek. Alright. Come, we've got it all, Fontana style.
Need to make a change to your title or need a title? Geoland Title Limited. They do lost title application, add and remove names from titles, wills, estates. First-time registration land surveys also included. Affordable rates and flexible payment options. NLA adjudication and land titling waivers also available. They have 8 locations island-wide. Call 876-754-6436 or visit their website at geolandonline.com. Geoland Title Limited. Secure your land, secure your title.
March!
Gather together, be brothers and sisters, we're independent.
But you are listening to History for Tomorrow on Nationwide 90 FM. It is now time for This Week in History with Ashley Onfrey. So, morning, Ashley, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Enrique. Hi, Mia. I'm doing great.
All
and
right.
I'm very excited about this week's, what we're looking at for this week in history.
Okay, well, I don't have a clue what you were going to share with us, so please share the excitement with the rest of us.
Okay, so this week we're taking you a little way back into colonial Caribbean in the late 18th century, and we'll be looking at a resistance movement. Now, for the CXC history students tuned in, you may want to listen up because this week in history we'll be exploring a massive uprising that took place in 1795 on the island of Grenada. If you guessed it, congratulations! We'll be looking at the 1795 Grenadian Revolt, otherwise known as Fedon's Revolt. Now, Fedon's Rebellion is an important act of Caribbean resistance in the final stages of the slave era, and it's known as Fedon's Rebellion or Revolt because it was spearheaded by Julien Fedon, now known as the main leader and central figure of the rebellion, though he was assisted by a few others like Charles Nicole, Joachim Philippe, Jean-Pierre Lavalette, Stanislas Besson, and Jean Fedon, who was his brother. Now, Julien Fedon was born in Martinique and was the son of a white French jeweler who migrated to Martinique from Bordeaux, France in 1749, and his mother was a freed black slave. Now, he was sent to England for part of his education and married another member of the new class of colored French planters in Grenada, with whom he had 2 daughters. Now, before the rebellion, He inherited his father's 360-acre estate, Belvedere, and he also owned 96 slaves who engaged in sugar, cocoa, and coffee plantation. And he was also a leading member of Grenada's French army. Now, the rebellion itself happened from March the 2nd to 1795 to June 19, 1796. So it was a little over a year or 16 months, and it occurred throughout the island of Grenada. Now, importantly, this was not a spontaneous act of resistance because they began planning for the rebellion from March 1793 when Fedon began converting his Belvedere plantation into a fortified headquarters, and he planted crops for his army. Now, in June 1795, two of his colleagues went to Guadeloupe, and they were under the control of the French Revolutionary Commissioners so that they could receive weapons, training, and military appointments. And that was when Fedon himself became General-in-Chief of the Grenadian Rebel Army. Now, his army, or the force, attacked Guayave and Granville, two of the island's major towns. And even though the attack on Guayave was relatively peaceful, the attack on Granville was where basically the white population was slaughtered and many hostages were taken. Now, after the uprising, the British launched several attacks trying to conquer Belvedere. But because of its location, which was on a very steep mountain, it became difficult because it was almost inaccessible. After the failure of the attacks, Julian Fedon, he ordered the deaths of about 40 white hostages, and so we can see how the rebellion really kicked off.
Yeah, he was taking no prisoners, right?
Yeah, no, he definitely, he was not joking. And the rebel army, they looted, they pillaged and burnt many of the island's plantations while fighting here and there with British troops. Now, both sides attempted to capture and recapture lands and outposts with varying successes. Now, in the meantime, the British Royal Navy, they managed to maintain an effective blockade of the island, so isolating Fedon's army, which means that they had limited access to reinforcements and military supplies. And because they had destroyed so many of the crops the year before, there was a bit of a food shortage, whereas the British, on the other hand, were able to receive major support. And so eventually, in June 1796, the British were able to launch another attack on Belvedere, and this time it was successful, and Fedon's army was defeated, and the rebellion ended. Now, it's interesting because Fedon's revolt, it resulted in several debates among historians about the true objective of the rebellion, whether it was because they wanted to abolish slavery and advance black persons, or if it was solely about liberating the island from British rule and severing the island's ties with France. Because of the middle and upper classes, they were mostly French-based and linked to France.
All right, I see what you say about the debate. He was no slave. He was no former slave either. So it's not clear at all, right? What was the cause and what were the objectives? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So there are several things that were happening at that point in the Caribbean and the broader Atlantic world. One of those main issues, especially in Grenada, was racial discrimination against the free colors. And of course, Fedon, he was a free colored person. And it was a major cause of discontent. Much of the white persons in Grenada, they were British, and they found the heritage of the majority of the island's free colored to be distasteful. So there's a lot of discontentment there. And even when the island became British in 1763, there were some differences there because the British authorities, they passed a law requiring all free coloreds to basically divulge information, and they were being treated as second-class citizens. So that would have enraged or given them a bit of impetus or reason to rebel. And it's also important to note that at that time too, Britain and France, they were engaged in a very vicious guerrilla warfare between 1794 and 1798. So Grenada was basically split in two. And most importantly, at that time, the French Revolution was well underway from about 1789. So the ideologies of freedom and liberty, equality and fraternity, they were very rampant. And of course, persons on the island, they would have bought into that idea and wanted to experience freedom for themselves.
Okay. So then what were some of the outcomes of the rebellion? Like how did this impact the region?
Well, for one, the Grenadian economy was devastated. They lost a lot of distilleries, plantations, which was a major source of income during that point in history. They were all destroyed. And as a result of Fedon's rebellion, the French influence in Grenada was eradicated once and for all. The rebellion too in 1795 contributed to the anti-slavery campaigns in Europe because it forced the British to send the largest, most expensive army ever across to Grenada. And of course, that sparked great discussions in the metropole about abolishing slavery. And, for local history, for the island, Fedon himself, he remained an iconic figure in Grenadian political culture. And his contribution to the rebellion is considered to be part of a large-scale revolutionary tradition in Grenada. And that kind of came to head in 1979 with the Grenadian Revolution under Maurice Bishop.
All right, that's very interesting. I had no clue about it. But before, of course, I want to know what happened to Julien Fedon. But before that, you could perhaps tell us a little bit, because this is a rebellion in the Caribbean, right? But at the same time, there are other rebellions happening in around this period. Do we have any clue as to why these rebellions seem to be less known, or in some ways was considered less impactful than maybe other rebellions in the Caribbean?
Yes, you're right, Enrique. There were several other rebellions happening at the time. Most of them we are more familiar with. For example, the slave revolt in Barbados in 1816, Demerara revolt in 1823, and of course the Baptist War in 1831. And it's all happening in the context of this very high focus on abolition of slavery, and in the context of the French Revolution. And I think probably what happened was because there was an insurrection in Haiti, happening before 1791, that might have overshadowed it a bit. But thankfully, in recent years, from about the 1980s, more historians have been delving into the contributions of Fedon's rebellion and trying to figure out, how it is that it's related to even contemporary politics in the Caribbean.
Okay. And what about him? What happened to Julien Fedon?
Well, unfortunately, to this day, very little is certain about his fate, about what happened to him after the rebellion. It's largely a mystery. But some sources mention that he drowned trying to escape to Trinidad, although those are largely speculations from word of mouth. And then there are other historians who mention that persons reported sightings of him even into the next century. But one thing is certain, though, about him is that his legacy lives on, because Fedon's rebellion has been the subject of a resurgence in popular culture and the focus of several works of literature. And he and the rebellion he led has become a key figure in Grenada's tourism industry. So that's how his legacy continues.
All right. So I guess the tourists are also interested in the history of the relatively unknown island of the Caribbean. So that's good. That history helps also to put Grenada on the map, in addition to, of course, Maurice Bishop and other niceties, because I know the island is really beautiful for what I
I didn't get to do Cape history. I know, shocking. But so like hearing this story is really...
Are you regretting it, and are you planning to maybe doing it now?
Oh, I think maybe it might really impact my career now if I go back and do Cape history. It might be the move.
Okay. All right.
Yes, pretty interesting for that topic.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, thanks a lot, Ashley. That's all we have time for. We're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back shortly with what's popping. Please stay tuned.
Because your time has come when you can have your fun, so make a run.
Yes, it's so nice to shop Fontana style. Our service is top Fontana style. Easy parking, friendly smiles.
And we go that extra mile.
Come, enjoy it all. Variety galore, Fontana style.
Low prices and much more Fontana style.
Fontana style. This pharmacy
Who shops at Creative Building Finishes? You, the homeowner who creates luxurious spaces with our floor and wall tiles. The contractor and builder who are convinced that our ceramic tiles are right for the job. The architect and designer who make dreams come true with our wood look and porcelain tiles. Superior customer service, knowledgeable staff, inviting showroom, and you get where this is going, right? Shop 5 Red Hills Road or call 876-929-5553. Get tiles, get Creative Building Finishes.
Viniga denu kama desa. Oh mama baba, tout ça yo ja fait nous les noirs. Oh ancestor, viniga denu kama desa. Diamonds on the wristwatch, bling the time away. Diamonds on your ear so you're not hearing what I say. Diamonds for the price of the African slave. Shiny things decipher in the dark and the shade.
Welcome back. This is History for Tomorrow on Nationwide 90 FM. We are now in the segment What's Popping? What's up, Sadine?
Hi, Mia. Hi, Enrique. And hello to our listeners. Good morning. Good morning. So we're going to talk about grief tourism today. And this is based on an article that came out recently in the Telegraph. So according to the Telegraph, Jamaica is at the forefront of a pioneering tourism initiative known as grief tourism. And that concept really involves the restoration and repurposing of sites associated with the transatlantic slave trade. And this initiative, it's aimed at transforming locations once marked by shame and suffering into educational and remembrance destinations with the aim of honoring the legacy of enslaved individuals and reclaiming Jamaica's history.
Oh, that's the aim.
That's the aim of
So the aim is not to make more money.
Well, we'll see. It's something that we're gonna talk more
Okay,
about.
all right.
What it really means.
Sorry, I'm jumping too far ahead.
So Edmund Bartley, Jamaica's Minister of Tourism, has authored a book titled "Decoding the Future of Tourism Resilience," which includes a chapter on the potential of more morbid destinations.
He calls it morbid destinations, so that was you.
Well, I have not read the book, so that's the essence of the article.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He has told the Telegraph that he's looking at the potential of Jamaica as a destination for those seeking to see and understand the inequities of slavery. The country's slave economy produced fortunes in sugar during Britain's 300-year rule, as we all know. And the minister said that he's working closely with the Ministry of Culture and the Jamaica National Heritage Trust to ensure conservation work and restoration for historic sites and monuments linked to the colonial past. So by repurposing these sites, as I mentioned before, Jamaica has an opportunity to create spaces where visitors can engage with really the painful realities of slavery, while reflecting on the resilience and strength of those who endured it. And through guided tours, educational exhibits, interactive experiences, tourists will now have an opportunity to gain a deep understanding of the impact of slavery on Jamaican society and the world at large.
Mm-hmm.
So Enrique mentioned it before, what is really grief tourism? And it is not without its challenges. The concept, the definition of it, the understanding of it, the action of it. And critics argue that commercializing these sites may risk trivializing the suffering of enslaved individuals and exploiting their pain for profit. However, on the opposite side, proponents of this initiative argue that it is essential to preserve these historic landmarks for future generations and to ensure that the stories of those who have suffered, they're not forgotten. And like we mentioned, one of the key goals is really to stimulate economic growth in the communities that have been historically marginalized. So it gives us an opportunity to use something painful and maybe make it positive or profitable, I guess.
No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain, I guess. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons. So let's look at the positives first. Historical.
There are positives. So
there are positives. We have to explore everything. Okay. I know we all have very strong views on it, though. So pros about everything over here. So historical preservation, it gives us an opportunity to restore and preserve these sites linked to the slave trade. And this can be crucial for safeguarding historical landmarks and ensuring that future generations can learn from the past. By maintaining these locations, we have an opportunity to uphold the memory of millions of individuals who endured, this unimaginable suffering. Then there's the opportunity for education and awareness. Grief tourism does provide an opportunity for educating visitors about the atrocities of slavery and its enduring impact on societies worldwide. So it gives them an understanding, and that can foster empathy and a commitment to social justice. Then there's the pro of healing and remembrance. Not only does it allow people to come in and experience and understand what really took place, but it gives an opportunity to descendants of enslaved individuals by providing a space for reflection and honoring their ancestors' struggles. And that can be useful in healing intergenerational trauma and promoting reconciliation within these communities. And like we mentioned, economic benefits.
And I know that that's something that's been done actually in America, in Africa. There have been these efforts to rebury enslaved persons who were, oftentimes thrown into mass graves at different points of the passage. So this is a really powerful.
Yes, the healing and remembrance part of it is probably the part that I agree with and understand the most, because I think it's important for local communities to be able to connect with their history that way. But lastly, we have the economic benefits, and it provides an opportunity for Jamaica to diversify the tourism industry and stimulate the local economy, create more jobs and generate revenue for the communities in need. So that's, the baseline understanding of, what this sort of tourism can bring.
Okay.
But there are some negatives. For example, commercialization.
Where should I start?
I know
what to say about this. This is where we're all kind of like
deep sigh. So grief tourism may prioritize profit over ethical considerations, and this can potentially exploit the pain and suffering of enslaved individuals and their descendants. And so to mitigate against that, it is essential to ensure that these sites are managed with integrity and respect for the historical significance. Then we have appropriation. So using slave trade sites as tourist attractions may inadvertently trivialize or commodify the trauma of slavery, leading to concerns of cultural appropriation. And
by commodify, maybe you need to explain what do we mean by this too.
So let me give you an example. Have you ever seen, not something directly related, but have you ever seen those little Rasta statues that say Jamaica me crazy? And I know the intention isn't to mock the Rastafari and what Rastafari people look like and how they speak.
Well.
But I don't think the intention is there. But when you
maybe the intention is not there. I don't know what the intention is.
But when you create a product, when you create something that's a part of a heritage into a product, sometimes you miss the mark.
A product, and that's the problem with commodifying, that you turn something into a product for sale.
You just look at the phrase "yaman,"
exactly.
which is
so it can lack sensitivity when you're trying to make profits.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the next thing that I was going to talk about, sensitivity and respect. While it can provide opportunities for education and healing, it is very important to navigate its implementation with sensitivity and respect, ensuring that the stories and experiences of enslaved individuals are accurately portrayed and honored, and that is very important to maintaining the integrity of the sites. And last one, potential for misinterpretation. So visitors may misinterpret or misunderstand the significance of these slave trade sites, leading to superficial engagement and inappropriate behavior. Jeez.
What were you thinking?
Where did I go? Educating tourists about the historical context and cultural sensitivity is essential for fostering meaningful and respectful interactions with these sites. So the question is, after I've shared everything, what do you think? Do the pros outweigh the cons? And, before we get to that conclusion, we have to link it a little bit to dark tourism, but I want to give you both an opportunity to jump in before I share what dark tourism is and how it relates to this concept that we're discussing.
No, thank you, because this is a very interesting piece, and I think one thing was like historians, heritage practitioners have perhaps a lot to say, community activists as well.
Yes.
Right? I will say, just for starters, just two things, and I'm saying this because I'm going to be brutally honest. Many of the policies, initiatives by the Ministry of Tourism seem to me very unprogressive. They're very dated. And they're dated in the sense that it's a very top-down approach to tourism and any initiative. They never really start from sort of like grassroots or community level initiatives, but it's just more of an effort from above to sort of like take advantage for whatever portfolio you have and so on. So that is exceedingly problematic to me. I was going to say it's almost colonial in the way that these policies are developed, but it's not just colonial. It's also very 20th century kind of like approach of disregard for citizens, communities, and so on. You cited, I think, Jamaica National Heritage Trust, Ministry of Culture, and of course, Ministry of Tourism. Where are the sort of like, first of all, where are the historians here? Where are the heritage practitioners? And where are the community activists, different groups that are doing this kind of work? They are totally missing from this picture. And the second thing, which is extremely problematic to me as well, is that I think it's enough of selling these sort of things for tourists. If anybody needs to be educated, first and foremost, is the Jamaican citizens.
Yes.
If anybody needs to benefit from this, first and foremost, is the Jamaican citizens.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Because they're making it a product, what will happen is, as always, it's going to be inaccessible at some point to the local communities that are supposed to benefit from it. We've seen it happen time and time again. And I mean, we can hope that they put measures in place where our local communities can have access to our historical sites and learn from them, but we know how it really goes.
Yeah.
I wanted to briefly mention dark tourism, which is kind of linked to grief tourism a little bit, and it encompasses visits to sites associated with death, tragedy, or suffering. And so while grief tourism may represent a more nuanced approach to this version of dark tourism, it's crucial to look at the implications. And as Jamaica grapples with the balance between economic growth and sustainability, we really must consider the role of tourism in the country's GDP and the potential trade-offs associated with its expansion. Amidst the imperative for economic diversification and the pressing concerns of climate change, a deeper examination of tourism's contributions becomes imperative. And I understand where grief tourism may provide us with an opportunity to diversify, but the complexities of it must be addressed while looking at the broader economic and environmental considerations for Jamaica's development.
Yeah. So
no. I mean, I just to that point, it diversifies tourism, but it increases the dependency on tourism.
Yes.
So I think what needs to be diversified, what needs to be invested on, is the wider Jamaican economy. And sometimes I think, well, you know, I guess the minister could argue, well, by bringing in tourists, we are giving other types of opportunities to other businesses and so on. But I think those opportunities are targeting the tourism sector, no matter what, the service sector. You still have to invest in other aspects of the economy. And I suggest that part of the revenues of tourism need to be used for that sort of diversification of the economy, less dependency on tourism.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to agree with you, and we'll see how it develops, and we'll keep talking about it. That was What's Popping. Stay tuned. We'll be back with historical birthdays.
The menu, swipe a life away. Plenty in revenue for that state. Oh, mama papa, tout ça yo j'avais nous les noirs. Oh, ancestor, viniga denu kama desa. Oh mama baba, tusayo jafe nulenwa. Oh ancestor, viniga denu kama desa. Diamonds are for people sitting on the crown. Faces of the ugly trade the burdens with a frown. Diamonds in your wedding ring, you show it to the town. While the escalating trade requires suffering. Keep it to yourself then, I don't wanna hear.
On Monday, March 4, 2024, it's all about coconuts. Stop by the Pegasus Hotel on Knutsford Boulevard for the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development, a workshop under the Regional Coconut Project. Join Cliff Hughes online on March 4, 2024 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for all things coconut. The project is geared towards improving the production of coconuts across Jamaica and the Caribbean. Farmers, small and medium enterprises, Jamaica. You cannot miss this one. That's a live broadcast of the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development during Cliff Hughes Online on March 4 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This broadcast is brought to you by the Coconut Industry Board.
Nationwide this morning, the big show helps to make your loved ones feel extra special on their birthday. Listeners, send in your birthday and anniversary greetings. We will play a special song chosen just for you. Come celebrate with us during our birthday club every week at 8:18 a.m. right here on Nationwide 90 FM. Join the revolution in media.
Welcome back to History for Tomorrow on Nationwide 90 FM. We are now in our final segment. At this time, we highlight the birthday of a historical figure. So, Mia, whose birthday are we celebrating, commemorating this week?
Well, this week we are celebrating the birthday of the accomplished, the inventive, the evocative artist, Edna Manley. So as I mentioned, we're speaking about the artist, sculptor, and art educator Edna Manley. So Edna Swithenbank was born February 28th, 1900 in England to a British father and a mixed Jamaican mother. She studied at various art schools in England, including St. Michael's School of Art in London, as well as with private tutors. Edna met her cousin and future husband, Norman Manley, when he moved to England to pursue university education. The two married in 1921 and had two sons, Douglas and Michael Manley. Although she was trained in British neoclassical art tradition, she would play a major role in the development of 20th century Jamaican art. Edna is most famous for her artwork, which encapsulates the social and political context of Jamaica in the late 20th century and the wider anti-colonial and anti-racist struggles and actions of people of African heritage globally. Negro Aroused is her most influential work. Some of her other works include sculptures Prophet, Diggers, and Strike. Her works are in private collections, galleries, and public buildings worldwide, and if you are not able to get access those, you can go to the waterfront where one of her very famous statues is accessible to anyone. In 1929, she was awarded the Institute of Jamaica's Silver Musgrave Medal and became the recipient of the Gold Musgrave Medal for her outstanding contribution and leadership in arts in Jamaica in 1943. Edna Manley was co-founder of the Jamaica School of Art in 1950, which was renamed in her honor to the Edna Manley College of Visual and Performing Arts in 1995. In 1977, Edna Manley received the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters from the University of the West Indies and was awarded Order of Merit in 1980 from the Government of Jamaica. Edna Manley was an exceptional figure who created her own legacy, a woman who carved her path independently from the towering figures of her husband and son, and continues to influence and inspire many artists to this day. Happy birthday, Edna.
All right, so happy birthday to Edna Manley. I'm looking at some of the comments as we speak. A few comments have been shared. Noala was telling us that he liked the comment from the presenter about Port Royal. Oh yeah, that was me, right? Yeah, I made that comment. Yes, and mentioning that in Samarkand they built the 3 Timurid madrasa compared to the pictures of the ruins of from 1901. It made feel like Disney Park. So I guess he's talking about that commoditization,
right?
Like that often is talked about when it comes to historical sites, how they can turn into sort of like how you call it, some sort of entertainment attraction, right? And so on. Ledista is also telling us that we should bring or talk to Earl Moxham on his book. And I'm not sure which book this is, but Ledista will clarify, but we can find out anyway. And he says, I know he is on the competition. I don't know what competition. I mean, I don't know.
Sure.
Writing about history. Everybody is writing, so debating and stuff like that is part of the conversation rather than the competition, I suspect. And Noala saying that, I keep meaning to read the history of Jamaica by Long. I suspect that there is much to learn in there. And I will say this, there is much to learn in the sense that you can actually, you have to look at Long almost as a primary source in a way.
Yeah.
Because sure, he is also discussing the history, but it's also giving you a glimpse of the mentality of the time, observations of the time. So it's not just a secondary source, but it has turned into a primary source, right?
Well, yes, too, because it's not he's not interpreting data. He is giving a perspective from his firsthand experience, which is what makes a difference.
And I think what was very powerful about him in terms of the influence that he had and why he has become so sort of influential in terms of like British perceptions about the Caribbean, particularly about Jamaica and about race and so on, is because as opposed to the vast majority of the population in Britain at the time, he had supposedly first-hand knowledge of the situation because he had been to Jamaica and lived in Jamaica and so on.
His family had long had a influence on the...
Those are the sort of things that unfortunately can give credibility because there are many other authors who have discussed issues of race and so on about Africa or the Caribbean, and they never actually set foot on in the region.
Right.
All right. Ledista also mentioning that he uses the data from, I think is referring to
UCL
Professor Hall's,
database.
Database. So he really likes it, and also he likes that there is that he agrees that there is a change in terms of the perceptions, and I think that is undeniable. Just yesterday, for example, I share with some of my contacts an article in the Spanish newspaper El País, which is the leading newspaper, that talks about repatriation of African artifacts and so on. You really see that even in countries that, and I will say that Spain, for example, is behind in terms of all these debates compared to other parts of Europe. Right, but even there, you can see a change of mentality. So things are changing, and slowly, perhaps, but they are changing, and because of that, perhaps it also explains some of the pushback, right, of the backlash that there has been, and we talk about some of the authoritarian tendencies. I think some of those authoritarian tendencies are also a reaction to some of the transformations, questioning, the status quo and many of the order, the establishment, and so on. So I think I do agree that the change is real. Noala, regarding grief tourism is not new. There is a tower so he's referring to other examples. Of course, it's not new, but I mean, I think the exploitation of this in Jamaica is what will be new, right? And I think that's why the debate will be so necessary.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, this is not new. There have been a lot of efforts, as we mentioned earlier in the show. St. Helena was in 2022. The U.S. has been creating these reburial sites. So it's not new, but we haven't discussed it.
Yeah, yeah, and George Joseph's just the final comment. He says tourism is a mode of exportation. It's a mode of, I mean,
it's necessary.
It's an economic activity that can actually transform societies or help to transform a society. So nobody's questioning this. What I think we are questioning is the ways in which like we increase the dependency, and if we are going to create new tourism products, we can do it better.
Right.
To me, it's not about the pros and cons. It's about how even the cons we can improve those cons, so it's a better tourism offer for everybody.
Absolutely. So we just want to remind our listeners of the books that Professor Hall recommended: Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams and Small Island by Andrew Levy. We just want to thank you all for tuning in to History for Tomorrow. Thank you to our guests, Professor Catherine Hall, Shadice Edwards, and Akeem Webb from Cedar Grove Academy.
Thank you also to our researcher, Ashley Onfroy, our producer, Sudin Peters. Remember that you can listen to a repeat of the show at 9:30 p.m. on Monday. And please do tell people in your circle about History for Tomorrow so more people can join our conversation.
So join us next Saturday for another History for Tomorrow program right here on Nationwide 90 FM. Until next week, take care.
Have a great week.
Monday, March 4, 2024, it's all about coconuts. Stop by the Pegasus Hotel on Knutsford Boulevard for the Alliances for Coconut Industry Development, a workshop under the